Hello all, after an extended mic check, I am back once again broadcasting live from the extremely buried in snow Rockingham Township in Vermont, Santa Cruz County's hottest Google Slides live stream for now almost a whole year running. It's a tough streak to maintain, but we're going to do it. We have been doing it. I will assert, succeeded in doing it and will continue to do it, hopefully at least through the next year. Now, today's topic, I'm going to be talking about leftovers of leftovers, peritomaton peritoma, because there are a few bits and pieces that I forgot in last week's lecture, which was on poop, as you may remember. And if you don't remember, you should go back and watch it, because it will be helpful to know about all that stuff for what I'm going to talk about now. Well, and what I forgot was that I didn't give you any healthy advice. I didn't give you any good health advice about probiotics or anything like that, which I know, because I'm a doctor, you come to me for. So I want to talk a little bit today about how to ensure healthy bowel movements. And we're talking about some normative practices here. We don't think of bowel movements necessarily as an object of normative properties, but for Greek doctors, for people in the Hippocratic tradition, there definitely are some normative rules for how to poop. Well, you need to poop with the right physical characteristics, you can't be too diuretic or anything like that, and you had better poop 3 times a day. Not joking, Hippocrates really does say that. Have to poop 3 times a day, that's a healthy amount. An early instance of doctors making impractical and controlling demands. So that's the standard you're trying to achieve. 3 healthy poops a day. How do you do it? Well, Greek medicine prefers non-drug interventions first to solve most problems. Lifestyle, then diet, and then drugs and surgery at the end of that. And some people, like the author of On the Art, which is a pseudo-Hippocratic text, will say you can't even use drugs if you're a real doctor. You're just some warlock if you use pharmaca, if you use drugs. Well, so one thing you do to ensure those healthy 3 times a day bowel movements is that you walk. You walk for health. You take a walk around town every day, kind of a basic and non-radical way of ensuring healthy bowel movements. And what you do when you do that in Athens is you go along the peripatos, the around town walk, which goes around the Acropolis. And you may know that this peripatos is also the name of Aristotle's school of philosophy. Not coincidentally. Aristotle says he's talking about various kinds of ends or outcomes that you can speak of. When he's talking about the so-called houhenika, for the sake of which you do something, the logical, natural, or expected result of doing an action. Among the examples he gives is bowel movements. And he says the houhenika, the goal or end, the logical outcome of taking a walk, of going on a peripeteia, of engaging in peripatetic philosophy, I guess, but primarily of taking a walk around town, is to have lipaxis, or a bowel movement. So that's one measure you can take to keep your bowel movements regular and healthy. And I should mention that Aristotle says this just kind of casually as an example of a basic logical form. And in parentheses, I want to say that the fairly rigorous standards of taboo and disgust that we now apply to poop don't really apply in the ancient world. I mean, as we saw last week when we were talking about Artemidorus, poop is gross, but it's also not something just weird to see in public, whether it's animal poop or human poop. It can just be around town. You don't want to step in it, but it's not like you throw up if you see it or something. And more importantly, I guess, you can also just talk about it. It's not a taboo subject of conversation. And this non-taboo character, this non-special character of poop, is going to be important to keep in mind for the next few minutes of what I'm talking about. Well, so walking around town is one fairly straightforward way to keep your bowel movements regular. There are dietary recommendations having to do mostly with eating like porridge and such. Um, but then eventually you get around to various kind of drug interventions, um, which do something. For the word for which is cathyro. These medical interventions are supposed to clean you out. Cathyro is a Greek verb, part of a family of Greek verbs, meaning to clean out, alongside cathareo and catharizo. Now, this verb cathyro can be used to talk about clearing somebody of all sorts of humors. And this generalized usage, you can cathyrane phlegm or blood or anything like that. This generalized usage expresses a kind of a Greek theory of disease, which is generally held by all physicians pretty much, that imagines disease as a nasty thing inside that you got to get out. Whether that's an actual like disease entity or some sort of excess of humors, there's a sense that you can fix the disease by venting it to the outside. And that's what's entailed in this usage of cathyro for clearing somebody of a disease. But it is, I think, most often used with reference to laxatives, to various means of causing somebody to defecate. And the verbal noun derived from this is a word that you probably will recognize, because that verbal noun is catharsis. Catharsis means the act of clearing out, or the act of laxativizing, possibly. So you know this word, maybe if you know it, because of its appearance in Aristotle and in a lot of subsequent literary criticism that depends on the Aristotelian tradition. If we're talking about what it is in Aristotle, this is an object of some debate, but some things are fairly certain. So it's an effect of art. He talks about it in the context of tragedy, and he talks about it in the context of music. And more or less, it's equivalent to some kind of emotional release. This much is agreed on. There is some debate then over its exact features, because the passage on catharsis, which is most frequently read, which is in Aristotle's Poetics, does not necessarily say how catharsis relieves these kinds of negative emotions, which it loosely talks about, pity and fear. Does it relieve them by causing you to experience them? Does it relieve them by drawing them out of you? Does it relieve some kind of a tension that has to be resolved through the experience of pity and fear? The Poetics bit is not clear on this. A second discussion in the Aristotelian corpus in the Politics, which is in Book 8 of the Politics, which most people don't read, is a little bit clearer. Because there, Aristotle starts talking about the effect of music as a kind of a catharsis and a lightening, kouphizesthai, which is accompanied by pleasure. So here it seems that you're actually losing some emotional content when you experience catharsis. And you can see in the vocabulary here, we are actually getting a little bit closer to the discussion of Artemidorus when he talks about dreams of pooping, because he says that you experience a lightening, kouphizesthai, when you poop in a dream, and this symbolizes a mental lightening, relief of cares, which you'll experience in waking life. That's the symbolic meaning of dreaming of pooping in a designated pooping area, as Artemidorus says. Well, now, if you get into some of the more recently discovered fragments, and these fragments all come from a Philodemus text on poets, and this is one of those kind of charcoal briquettes from Herculaneum, the giant library of Philodemus papyri. Philodemus is a Epicurean philosopher who wrote in Greek, taught in Italy, in the area of Naples, and it seems to be a large library of his writings was preserved, partially burned, partially preserved by the eruption of Pompeii, the famous one that destroyed, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that destroyed Pompeii, and also caused Herculaneum to be on fire. Well, so that's the source of these new Aristotle fragments, and they're a little bit clearer about some more extensive parallels between catharsis, the aesthetic process, the experience of art, and cathyro, or catharsis, the process of taking a laxative. Because there, Aristotle talks about these negative emotions, these bad feelings, fear in brave souls, jealousy in magnanimous souls, lack of self-control in the most prudent. These things that build up, much like black bile builds up in the body, no matter how virtuous you are and how well you live. And they do produce these negative behavior outcomes, which he then goes on to list. That is the stuff that catharsis is supposed to get out of you. It's supposed to remove those bad feelings that are kind of building up in there, by allowing you to see them represented and experience them with respect to characters on a stage, for instance. One of the kind of normal objects of cathartic emotional transfer. You have got to have these emotions regularly vented. Maybe not 3 times a day, but at least often enough that they're not causing you to become angry all the time, or any of the other things that having these bad feelings build up can cause. So this is a view that Aristotle is leveling against Plato, who also has a very kind of deterministic view of how art works. Plato thinks that art causes you to have those bad feelings that Aristotle says that art actually helps you vent. So Plato says that from a kind of a soul perspective, tragedy causes disease, causes illness. Aristotle flips it around, and talking in this very kind of medical vocabulary, borrowed from the domain of laxatives and purifying bad humors, he says that art is actually the cure for the disease, which is our horrible brains. So it's a kind of a soul doctor. There is a metaphorics here, metaphorics that again reminds us of Artemidorus's about brain pooping its worries out. Aristotle's addition to that way of thinking about the soul and its excrements is to say that tragedy is like a laxative for getting rid of your bad feelings. It helps regulate your soul's bowel movements, and it is therefore healthy for your soul and necessary for a well-oriented society. And that, because your brain is pooping out its fear and pity, is why we get to have art. And I say that now with a view to hopefully our all being able to leave this year and its worries behind in 2021. You know, if you're feeling a little overwrought by everything that's going on right now, try watching a movie or a Greek tragedy or something. Maybe it'll get that stuff out of your brain. Who knows? Well, that's it for tonight. I hope to see everyone back here again, same time, same place, next week.